Did you know that one of the most feared men in history wasn't very tall or particularly strong, but had an ambition so great it seemed too big for the planet? We're talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, the brilliant strategist who turned Europe into his warboard. Today, we're going back in time to uncover how he, with his famous triangular hat and a loyal army, almost conquered the entire continent, and how it all came crashing down in spectacular fashion. So hold on tight because this story has it all: spectacular battles, plot twists worthy of a soap opera, and even an escape plan from an island. You'll find yourself wondering, how did one man achieve so much, and lose everything in just a few years? At the end of the 18th century, France was in chaos. After the French Revolution, the people had overthrown the monarchy, but the country didn't quite know what to do with so much freedom. Political infighting, economic crises, and wars were breaking out everywhere. It was like an out-of-control party where no one could clean up the mess. It was in this scenario that a young general named Napoleon Bonaparte emerged, coming from the island of Corsica. And he had a plan to restore order, or in this case, to take control of the entire country. Napoleon was intelligent, charismatic, and had an incredible talent for commanding armies. He started by winning important battles and became a national hero. The French people were so desperate for someone who knew what to do that Napoleon not only became the country's leader but, a few years later, declared himself emperor. Yes, he basically said, "Okay, I'll handle this, but now I'm the real boss." And the most impressive thing, the guy managed to unite France and turn it into a powerhouse in record time. But Napoleon wasn't the type to settle for less. Governing France? Too easy. He wanted to dominate all of Europe. Thus began one of the greatest adventures in history, filled with alliances, betrayals, and epic battles that would change the continent's map. And you'll see how this ambitious dream had brilliant moments, and disastrous ones. After taking power, Napoleon started showing the world he wasn't playing around. In 1805, he faced one of the largest coalitions of countries against France, including Austria, Russia, and England, and came out victorious in epic battles like the Battle of Austerlitz, known as the Battle of the Three Emperors. Napoleon used brilliant and innovative strategies, making massive armies seem completely disorganized compared to his own. It was as if he were a gamer facing opponents on easy mode. With these victories, he managed to control much of Western and Central Europe. But for Napoleon, winning wasn't enough. He wanted more. So he created something called the Continental Blockade, an attempt to economically strangle England by banning European countries from trading with it. Here's the problem. Convincing entire nations to follow his orders was like trying to teach a cat to wear a leash. Many countries simply ignored the blockade, which began to spark revolts and wear down Napoleon's power. One example, Spain. He tried to occupy the country but ended up stuck in a long war that weakened his army and reputation. But Napoleon's biggest mistake was yet to come. The invasion of Russia in 1812. He took one of the largest armies in history to Moscow, but the Russians had a trick up their sleeve. Instead of confronting Napoleon directly, they retreated and burned everything in their path: villages, crops, supplies. When Napoleon finally reached Moscow, he found the city in ruins. Without supplies and with the Russian winter closing in, his army began to freeze, literally. Of the 600,000 soldiers he brought, fewer than 100,000 returned. It was a total disaster. And if that wasn't enough, while Napoleon was busy in Russia, his European enemies united again to attack him. In 1814, he was finally defeated and exiled to the island of Elba in the Mediterranean. But do you think he gave up? Of course not. In less than a year, Napoleon escaped from Elba, returned to France, and with his charisma managed to form a new army. It was like he had pulled a plot twist in his own story, leaving all of Europe in shock. But this second chance didn't last long. Just 100 days after his return, Napoleon met his fate at the famous Battle of Waterloo, where he was defeated for good. His dream of dominating Europe was over, but he had already left his mark on history as one of the greatest military strategists of all time. Was his exaggerated ambition what brought him down? Or could he have succeeded if he had been more patient? That's what we'll discover in the conclusion. In the end, Napoleon Bonaparte was both a genius and a man of excess. He revolutionized warfare, restructured France with reforms that are still felt today, and nearly united Europe under his command. But his unbridled ambition was also his greatest weakness. He didn't know when to stop while he was ahead, and each risky decision, like the Continental Blockade and the invasion of Russia, slowly eroded his strength. The great strategist was ultimately defeated not just by his enemies, but by the consequences of his own choices. But despite his mistakes, Napoleon's story remains fascinating. He rose from a small Mediterranean island to become the most powerful man in the world for a time, and left us with valuable lessons. Whether you're a leader, a student, or someone trying to succeed in life, remember, ambition is important, but knowing when to step back is essential. And never underestimate the Russian winter. If you've made it this far, don't forget to follow our channel, and thank you for being here.